My name is Emma, and I never thought I'd have to face the most painful betrayal of my life while standing on my own doorstep. But there they were, my parents, looking older and more desperate than I had ever seen them, asking to move into my house. The same parents who, 5 years ago, gave away my $2 million inheritance to my sister's failed business. I can still remember that day like it was yesterday. I was 23, fresh out of law school when my grandfather passed away. He had always been more of a father to me than my home dad. While my parents doted on my older sister, Claire, showering her with praise for her entrepreneurial spirit, Grandpa saw something in me that they never did. Emma, he'd say during our Sunday chess games, success isn't about making noise, it's about making the smartest moves. He paid for my law school tuition, encouraging me when my parents were too busy with Claire's business ventures and startup launches. The reading of Grandpa's will should have been simple. He had always told me that his estate would be split between Claire and me, each of us receiving $2 million. But when I sat in that wood-paneled office, watching a lawyer read from the will, I had no idea my parents had already set their plan into motion. As per the recent amendment, the lawyer read, adjusting his glasses, the entire $4 million will be transferred to Claire Mitchell for her business ventures. It felt like a punch to the gut. Amendment? What amendment? My parents avoided my gaze. Claire, on the other hand, couldn't hide her smirk. "Oh, Emma," Mom said, taking my hand, "try to understand. Claire's new tech startup needs capital. You have your law degree, you'll be fine. She needs this more than you do. You convinced Grandpa to change his will." My voice felt distant, detached. Dad finally spoke up, his voice carrying that self-righteous tone I despised. "It was the right thing to do. Your sister has real vision, Emma. This money will help her create something meaningful. You're just going to work for someone else anyway." I stormed out of that office, the sting of betrayal sharp in my chest. Later, I learned the truth from Grandpa's old friend and business partner. My parents had visited Grandpa in his final days, when he was barely conscious from medication, bringing papers they claimed were routine documents for his signature. That night, sitting alone in my tiny studio, surrounded by law school textbooks and student loan statements, I made myself a promise. I would never ask them for anything again. I would build my own success, brick by brick. And when they inevitably came crawling back, because people like them always do, I would remember this day. I threw myself into my career, working endless hours at a corporate law firm, while Claire burned through Grandpa's money on failed ventures, expensive offices, marketing schemes, and consultants who did nothing but organize retreats. I built something real. My colleagues called me ruthless. I called it focused. Every case I won, every client I landed, every bonus I earned was a step further from that day in the lawyer's office. I saved every penny, lived on ramen and coffee, and watched Claire's businesses fall apart one by one. First, it was her tech startup, a social media app that was supposed to change everything. When that failed, she tried an organic juice bar. Then came a cryptocurrency investment scheme. Each failure bigger than the last, each one burning through more of what should have been my inheritance. My parents kept defending her, reminding me at every holiday dinner how Claire was taking risks, while I just played it safe with my little lawyer job. After the second year, I stopped going to those dinners. Now 5 years later, I own a beautiful home in the city's best neighborhood, made partner at my firm, and have a reputation for never losing a case. And my family? Well, karma always has a way of catching up. But now, standing on my doorstep, staring at my parents' worn faces, I can't help but think back to what Grandpa used to say during our chess games. The most satisfying victory isn't just winning, Emma. It's making sure your opponent knows exactly why they lost. And I'm about to teach him that lesson. I closed the door behind me and walked into my study, my parents' voices still echoing in my head. Their story was almost too perfect. It was the kind of sob story you could sell to a charity. Claire's latest venture, a chain of luxury pet spas, had crumbled spectacularly, taking their retirement savings with it. They even mortgaged their house one last time to help her, and now the bank was foreclosing. "Just until we get back on our feet," Mom had pleaded through the door. "We're still your parents, Emma." I sat at my desk and opened my laptop to check on something I'd been tracking for months. There it was, the bankruptcy filing for *Pawfection Luxury Pet Spa LLC*. Claire had managed to burn through $3.5 million in just 18 months. As I scrolled through the itemized expenses, my blood began to boil. $50,000 for brand consulting, $75,000 for workplace ambience design, $100,000 for a celebrity pet influencer campaign. My phone buzzed. Speaking of Claire, her message popped up. You have to help them. They lost everything because of me. At least she was finally admitting it. But then came the next message, and I couldn't help but laugh. Maybe you could give them some of your money? You're doing so well now. The audacity was staggering. I thought back to the day I'd closed on this house, just 3 months ago. I'd invited them to see it, offering an olive branch despite everything. Their reaction? Dad had smirked. Well, it's nice. Small but nice. Nothing like what Claire's place used to be, of course. Mom had added, at least you're saving money living alone. No family to support, just yourself. They declined my dinner invitation, saying they needed to help Claire with her business emergency. Later, I learned that Emergency was choosing imported Italian marble for her pet spa's reception area. A knock on the office door interrupted my thoughts. Ms. Mitchell? Sarah, my housekeeper, looked concerned. Your parents are still outside. Should I call security? I walked over to the window. They'd set up camp on my front steps, Dad glued to his phone, probably trying to reach Claire, while Mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her dramatic flair on full display. A few neighbors had gathered, clearly enjoying the spectacle. No, Sarah. Let them stay. They're about to learn a valuable lesson about consequences. I spent the next hour making calls. First, I contacted my private investigator. I hadn't spent 5 years idly watching Claire burn through Grandpa's money. I had the documentation, the forged amendment to the will, the bank transfers, and even recordings of my parents admitting what they'd done. Next, I called Marcus, my firm's top criminal defense attorney. Is everything ready? I asked. All the paperwork's filed, he confirmed. We can move whenever you're ready. Finally, I reached out to the one person who had been there for me through all of this. Uncle Robert, it's time. Uncle Robert, Grandpa's younger brother, had been gathering evidence since the day of the will reading. He'd never believed I would have been cut out of the inheritance. Together, we built an airtight case. I stood up, adjusting my suit. It was time to face my family. But before I stepped into the lion's den, I turned to Sarah. Would you mind getting the security cameras ready? I want to record what happens next. As I opened the front door, Dad jumped up. Finally? Emma, be reasonable. We're freezing out here. Mom sniffled loudly. How can you treat your own parents this way? I smiled, the same smug, victorious grin Claire had worn 5 years ago at the will reading. You're right, we should talk. Come in. They rushed past me into the warm house, heading straight for my living room with its sleek leather furniture and roaring fireplace. The irony wasn't lost on me. They looked so small now, sitting there, nothing like the intimidating figures who had once crushed my dreams. Before we discuss your housing situation, I began, sitting across from them. There's something you should know. Uncle Robert and I had a very interesting meeting with the district attorney last week. The color drained from Dad's face and Mom froze mid-sniffle, the tissue dangling from her hand. Funny thing about forging signatures on legal documents, I continued, pulling a thick folder from my desk. It's actually a federal crime. The silence in my living room was deafening as I spread out the documents across the coffee table. Police reports, bank statements, hospital records from Grandpa's final days, and most damning of all, the original will. Where did you get these? Dad's voice trembled. I'm a lawyer, Dad. Finding evidence is what I do. I pulled out a specific document, like this nursing log from Grandpa's last week. Interesting notes about your visits, especially on the day he supposedly changed his will. Patient heavily sedated, barely conscious. Mom burst into tears. Real ones this time. We were just trying to help Claire. By committing fraud, I kept my voice steady. By stealing $2 million from your other daughter. You don't understand, Dad started, but I cut him off. Oh, I understand perfectly. Let me show you exactly what I understand. I opened my laptop and clicked through a presentation I'd prepared. Here's a breakdown of how Claire spent my inheritance. $200,000 on a business retreat in Bali, $150,000 on office furniture, $80,000 on team building at luxury resorts. I clicked through more slides. Meanwhile, I was living on $30 a day, working 16-hour shifts, paying off student loans that you promised would be covered by my inheritance. The doorbell rang. Sarah answered it and showed Uncle Robert into the living room. Mom's face went pale. "Robert," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" "Supporting my niece," he said firmly, sitting beside me, "like I should have done 5 years ago when you stole her inheritance." Dad stood up, his face red. "Now see here." "No, you see here," Uncle Robert interrupted, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've spent 5 years watching Emma rebuild her life while you enabled Claire's destruction of everything my brother worked for. It stops now." I pulled out another document. "This is a settlement offer. In exchange for not pressing criminal charges for fraud, you'll sign a confession admitting what you did with Grandpa's will. You'll also agree to pay me back the full $2 million. $2 million? Mom's voice rose in hysteria. "We don't have that kind of money. We lost everything." "Then you'll sell your house," I said calmly. "Oh wait, you can't. You mortgaged it for Claire's pet spaz." "Well, I guess you'll have to figure something out. Just like I had to. You'd send your own parents to jail?" Dad's voice barely rose above a whisper. "You stole from your own daughter," Uncle Robert replied before I could. "Which is worse?" My phone buzzed. Perfect timing. Claire again. I put it on speaker. "Emma." Her voice echoed through the room. "Mom and Dad say you're threatening them with jail. How could you? After everything they've done for us." "For you," I corrected. "Everything they've done for you, Claire. And now it's time to pay for it. You're named in the settlement too." "What? But I didn't do anything wrong." "You knew about the forged will. You spent money you knew wasn't yours. That makes you an accessory to fraud." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, she spoke again, her voice small. "What do you want?" "The same thing I wanted 5 years ago. What's rightfully mine." Uncle Robert and I sat in the kitchen later that night, the quiet hum of the house filling the spaces their absence had left. My parents had gone, settlement papers in hand, and for the first time in years, the air felt lighter, as if their departure had purged the last remnants of old wounds. "Sign by tomorrow or I file charges," I had told them. The memory of Dad's face, pale and slack as he realized I wasn't bluffing, would stay with me forever. Uncle Robert set his coffee mug on the table and leaned back, the tension from earlier giving way to quiet reflection. "You know this means they'll have to sell everything," he said. "Even that vacation house in Florida." I let out a bitter laugh. "The one they bought while I was scraping by on Raymond and working double shifts." "Oh, I'm painfully aware." My phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up with a flood of messages. Word had spread quickly. Most of them were from extended family, not outraged at what my parents had done, but at my decision to hold them accountable. "Your bratty daughter is threatening us with jail." Mom had wasted no time rallying anyone who would listen to her cries of victimhood. "After everything we sacrificed for her." I scrolled through the messages, blocking the predictable outrage one by one. Only one text stopped me. A message from Aunt Susan, Grandpa's sister. It read simply, "He would be proud of you, Emma, not just for what you've achieved, but for standing up for yourself. He always knew you had it in you." The next morning my lawyer called. The settlement had been signed. My parents and Claire had already listed their homes for sale, liquidating everything they could. Claire's husband had left her, citing her financial mess as a betrayal too big to overcome. A week later, they showed up again, this time with Claire in tow. All three looked beaten down, their arrogance stripped away. "Please," Claire said, her voice trembling, no hint of her usual smugness. "We have nowhere else to go. All our friends turned us away." "Funny how that works," I said, arms crossed. "People stop answering your calls when you can't afford to buy their loyalty anymore." Mom stepped forward, her voice breaking. "We're family, Emma. Despite everything." "Despite everything?" I cut her off, the laugh bubbling out more bitter than I intended. "Despite stealing my inheritance? Despite 5 years of humiliation, mockery, and silence while you watched me struggle, you don't get to pull the family card now." I reached into my purse and pulled out 3 plain envelopes, sliding them across the threshold. "Here's what family should do." Inside are bus tickets to Florida and enough money to cover 3 months' rent on a modest apartment. Not because you've earned it, but because Grandpa taught me to be better than you. Dad reached for the envelopes with trembling hands, his voice cracking. "Emma, thank you." I held up a hand, stopping him. Don't mistake this for forgiveness. This is a transaction, not a reunion. Once you've paid back every cent you stole, maybe we can talk about family. Until then, we're just strangers tied by bad choices and blood. I watched them shuffle away, weighed down not by luggage, but by the consequences they'd spent years outrunning. Claire's designer handbag had been replaced by a cheap nylon backpack, Mom's glittering jewelry now long gone, sold to cover legal fees. Even Dad's once confident gait had crumbled under the weight of his own failures. That night, I sat in Grandpa's old chest chair, the one relic of his I had kept, and poured myself a glass of wine. The house was quiet, but not empty. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. "Checkmate," I whispered, raising my glass to his memory. Sarah walked in with the day's mail and handed me a thick envelope. On top was a letter from the district attorney's office. They were opening an investigation into several other cases of will fraud and wanted me to consult on the matter. I smiled, running my fingers over the letter. Grandpa had always said winning wasn't about taking the king. It was about playing the smartest game. Maybe justice wasn't just about ending one battle. It was about rewriting the rules for the next.